Yes. Jeremy, busy man, checking his phone as we get ready to record another Extra Bases podcast with Bristol and Booth. Jeremy, anything good on that phone, or are you just ordering out for the night?
Confidential. I can't
Ooh, I like that.
What I was just getting. Maybe later, not right now.
Okay. Big news around here in Houston, Jake Odorizzi. He was upset. He was frustrated. He was ticked that he was removed from a game on Tuesday night. And here's what he had to say, courtesy of the Houston Astros.
You want honesty? I think it's bullshit. So. Next question.
Question for Chandler.
Jake, have you vocalized that to Dusty or Strami?
No, nobody talked to me. So.
How frustrating is it for you, especially as someone that's signed here for the next year and maybe another year?
I think it's pretty freaking obvious. Just go take a look at it. It's not like I just, made my debut yesterday. Been doing this for a while. So it's extremely frustrating. So.
All right. Any question for McTaggart?
How do you think you'll just going forward? And it's just a conversation you're going to have with them. Just what do you think the next step is?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Question from Chandler.
Is this as frustrated as you've been as a major leaguer?
It's up there. I'm glad we won. Brady played great. Offense played great. Carlos played great. It's a great win. I'm glad we won. That's for sure. If not, I'm sure I would have been the subject of blame because of only going 5 innings. So I'm glad we won.
How did you feel about your stuff overall tonight?
Perfectly fine. The hit I gave up in this 5th inning, whatever it was, the ball off the plate exactly where I wanted to throw it. I'm not upset at all. I had good stuff. I had 66 pitches through 5 innings. I don't really know what needs to be said more than that. So I'm done. I'm not going to say anything more. So yeah.
Yeah, he called it that, Jeremy. So big picture thinking. Is this a big deal or a little deal?
It's not that cut and dry. It's both, and here's why. Jake Odorizzi is not a guy who has enough stuff, just raw stuff, to make mistakes and get away with it, right? So if you've got it, and look, I know he was cruising, and I know the pitch count was low, but when we look at tradition of what he's done, not just in one snapshot, but over time, it's at least the time to be cautious, right? Is it a quick trigger? Yeah. Would you rather have the quick trigger right now than in September or October rather? Yeah, because we saw what happened with Greinke a couple of years ago with the Nationals, right? You want to make sure the guys get a chance to pitch. And so it's a big deal because you kind of told the guy you don't trust him the third time around when he's in the 60s with his pitch count. It's not a big deal because history, even back when he was drafted with Milwaukee, they didn't expect him to be, a fireball or 98 type of guy. It's not who he is. Says that that's the right move. Now, the really big deal about all this is that the man was upset and the man was not afraid to say it. And if you're Dusty Baker, you're going up and you're applauding this dude and you're like, absolutely get pissed, take the ball, go ahead, tell me I'm wrong. I want you with that fire on the mound, 100%. A real manager is going to do that. So a manager who is more concerned about his own perception, and there are plenty of managers and GMs who are more concerned about their own perception in the media, is going to get, intimidated and maybe a little, well, let's just say it, a little hurt because we're talking about a softer type of guy. But if you're Dusty Baker, you're like, you know what, man? Yeah, don't do it again. Don't do it again. But I'm glad you have that fire. Okay, so now we're going to settle this, and next time we're in that situation, assuming they didn't have a conversation this time, we will discuss it next time to see where you are. You got a short leash, man, after 5 innings. This is where it is. You got a short leash after 2 times through the lineup. So know that going out and be efficient with your stuff. And the two guys be professionals and have an arrangement and agreement and go their own direction. So it's a big deal because the player had a reaction the way that he did. It's to me, that's just those two guys working that out, and professionals will do it like that and move on.
This would now be the second instance in at least 2-3 years that an Astros pitcher has expressed this kind of frustration. Zach Greinke did it differently by saying it after the fact, that when Dusty left him in the 2020 playoffs and didn't pull him, he said this was the first time that someone in this organization I felt this organization had confidence in me. Is this going to come to a head at some point, or is it just a situation where we're going to keep seeing these kinds of situations until we don't see them anymore? God, what am I trying to say here? What I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to say is, how long are we going to go through this charade?
It's funny. The words that ran into my head when you said how long we're going to go through this were literally the rest of time. And that's what it's going to be. It's not going to be, this is a baseball conversation. This is a human conversation when it comes to stuff and instincts and game feel. Listen, the problem with a lot of these analysts, and I get really amped up about this stuff because, the numbers in the analytics are just numbers. They're just numbers on a piece of paper, and they should guide you in whatever you're doing. And as far as the thought process, regardless of what kind of numbers we're looking at now, it's remiss to not pay at least attention to them, right? Because we've been doing that period of time. If numbers don't matter, we don't keep traditional stats. We don't keep advanced stats because they don't matter, okay? So we're looking at them to a point. You're talking about two guys, in Zach Greinke and in Jake Odorizzi, who are touch and feel, command center guys. They have to be command and control oriented to be effective. You're also talking about two entirely different front offices in the case of Zach Greinke. You're talking about AJ Hinch and you're talking about Voldemort versus, you have, versus Dusty Baker and James Click, right? So in the case of he who should not be named, I mean, you're in a situation where the guy just wasn't going to let Greinke take the ball. He went to AJ. AJ has done a good job as being a player's manager in two places now, right? So that's got to be noted. But he bought into that as well, and it was a really quick hook of Greinke, and it cost him the series. Now, second time around, Dusty goes out, trusts Zach Greinke as a veteran, listens to him, understands the field, and Zach is left in the ball game, and that's what happens, right? So we're all set with that. When it comes to Odorizzi, it's just, Jake hasn't been healthy 100% of the time. Jake has had battles with third time through the lineup. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into that, and all those factors will never change. Each pitcher, each situation is a different situation. It's no cookie cutter. There's guys that you will lean on. There's guys that you'll pull back on. It just depends on the situation. For all we know, Dusty's trying to set up something for the playoffs later and want to see how that looks now. You don't know where that's going to fit. You don't know what Odorizzi's role is going to be. We don't know yet because we're not there. And that's going to happen for a while until the answers are revealed. So this isn't going to go away. I don't necessarily see it as a numbers thing. I see it as a baseball feel thing, considering the numbers. That's how I see it.
Now, it's funny because Dusty Baker told Robert Ford on the Astros pregame show that I think based on what I heard, it was very much about the numbers and the fact that he does not do well third time around a lineup. Now, it's interesting. I appreciate instigator, Esquire at MZ Melbs, who said to me about Odorizzi's comments was, what's BS is an opponent line with a 6.62 ERA the third time through the order. And I said, that 1359 OPS against is awful. However, on only 66 pitches, I think a discussion should be had about getting one more inning. I don't know if that discussion took place in the dugout. He responded, he or she, realistically, if there was any willingness to engage in a conversation, it probably was gone once he gave up 2 doubles and a single at the top of the 5th. In September, the chances for let's see what happens are over. He needs to channel his anger into better performance. I disagree with that. I think, respectively, the chances for let's see what happens are over. I think baseball every single game of a 162 game season is about, let's see what happens. Because yes, when you're in the position that the Astros are in right now, I think it affords you a little bit more luxury. I mean, who's to say that if you let Jake Odorizzi go out there and retires the side in 6, 7, 8, 9 pitches, that maybe that clicks for something and he becomes a different guy down the stretch. Am I wrong with that thinking, Jeremy?
Not, well, first of all, before I answer that, both your point and what he said, she said, the very fact that we don't know, or at least have any idea if it's a he or a she, and you have a title like, what was it, Instigator? What was it again? What's the name, screen name?
Instigator Esquire.
You lose all credibility with me personally when
you can't give your real name.
Yeah, if you can't stand behind what you're saying, I mean, look, she was,
but I just don't know who he.
No, they're not.
I think it's a good argument. I thought it was a good. I mean, listen.
Yeah, but
it was respectful and this and that, and I get it. But I think we've talked about this many times. These are people. They're not machines, and the numbers don't always play out the way they have in the past. And if he's only got 66 pitches, sometimes on a third time around the order, he may have 80 or 90 pitches.
Well, I'm saying it this way, and I'm saying it this way, for a reason of, if you are tweeting from an account or anything that doesn't at least give the appearance of a real name, avatar, your credibility with me as far as whatever argument you're putting forward is immediately suspect. And I'm going to use myself as an example, and I probably shouldn't say this, but my follower count's not the highest in the planet. There's plenty of guys, people that are higher than me, but it's up there. I promise you all 30 major league teams see what I have to say. And I'm not saying that as an ego thing. It just gets circulated. It's what it is. I've spent a lot of time in that industry. And so if I say something like, I don't know, firing Jason Ochart, I promise you that spreads around. So my opinion can't be run from. It's just not that. So when you have a handle called Instigator 5000, or I don't know, the Odyssey, stop it. Like, either say who you are or move on. That said, you're both right. Because each game in the 162 is an audition for the postseason. He's kind of correct, and the Astros have to kind of figure this stuff out and have a better idea. The problem is the situation isn't the same as all the other ones. You don't have Odorizzi at 110 pitches or 89, 90 pitches through 5 innings. You got 66, I think the number was, right? It just goes out the window. It's why I said it can't always be about the numbers. And I was thinking Dusty wasn't doing it all about the numbers on a consistent basis. Maybe this time he did, but not on a consistent basis. He's wrong. The doubles don't mean a whole lot. It's about how the effect was happening, how he was rebounding on the mound, what his overall execution was like, what his third time through the lineup is. That's got to come into play. But you're still trying to figure this out for October. Like, you're not done yet. And so you're right. And in theory, he's right. She's right. They're right. The mule is right. I don't know what this is. It could have been, it could have been like Shrek for all we know. It was just sitting there, tweeting. It could be a fictional character, as they would say in some movies. So I don't know. I know that the problem with either argument is that not he's right, he, she, it is right. They pronoun game. They're right. Okay. And Jason Bristol, 30 Emmys, check mark, is correct in saying it's an audition. Still, every game's an audition for October because you're not there yet, but you also need to be fine tuning it by September 8th or 7th.
It's Hall of Fame day. Derek Jeter went in. I really think Derek Jeter is a part of two of the best modern day draft stories. One being the Astros had the #1 pick in the 1992 draft. They have a scout named Hal Newhouser, who of course was a very successful pitcher.
Right.
And Hal Newhouser says to the scouting staff, GM, listen, we got to take this guy. And at the time, they didn't want to pay the demands for Derek Jeter. And as we all know, they take Phil Nevin, who isn't a bad pick. I mean, the guy was an all-star.
Good pick.
But it wasn't Derek Jeter. So Hal Newhouser basically is saying, Well, listen, if they don't value my opinion, I'm out of here. Deuces.
Right.
I have to believe a lot of that has to do with Hal Newhouser's age at the time. And then the second best story, well, the second other great story is Dick Groach, the scout for the Yankees. Again, Derek Jeter, much like many prospects we see throughout the draft, has a little bit of leverage as a high school player. He's thinking about going to the University of Michigan and was asking for a lot of money. And Dick Groach, the scout, famously says he's not going to the University of Michigan. The only place Derek Jeter is going is Cooperstown. To me, those are two of the best draft stories of the modern era, and they're centered around the same guy.
Same guy.
Same guy.
You know, I had a chance to work with Dick Groach in Milwaukee.
Really?
Yeah, he was our pro scouting director at the time, and you know, and I was an area scout with the Brewers. And you know, regardless of whatever title I held with these clubs, you know, as you're well aware, I had a very accelerated role in development and things that I was doing, regardless of what the actual title was, and core responsibility. And the Brewers were no different. They were a lot of the foundation for that. And you know, so I had a lot of opportunity to go see, even evaluate a guy I knew pretty well in Ben Sheets, whether or not we'd re-sign him, right? And those are things that just happened. And I asked Dick about that story. It was really kind of fun to work with him. He was floored the Astros, at least from what he related to me, didn't take him, right? If you look at Phil Nevin, if you told everybody else, anybody picking at one, that your first overall pick was going to have whatever he had, 14 years, whatever what he did, you know, was an all-star, had those, you would be pretty happy with that if somebody told you that going into picking in the first round. Maybe not at 1-1, but even then you'd be pretty good. So it wasn't like he was a bad pick. But like you said, the problem was he isn't Derek Jeter. And when I got to see Derek Jeter as a pro, I saw him in the big leagues. I was doing coverage with Seattle, 2012. I had the Yankees organization, you know, for trades and free agent signs. You know, Robinson Cano was a prime target. You know, I was bearing him down. You know, and I got a chance to scout Jeter as a pro, not just see him from a player's side or spring training, but actually scout him. And I got to tell you, it was probably the easiest report I ever wrote in my life. It was cake. I mean, come to think of it, the guys in that team that I had to write up, you know, Curtis Granderson, Alex Rodriguez, Derek Jeter, Robinson Cano, Mark Teixeira, you know, just overall wasn't difficult. Those weren't tough to write up. But Jeter was, the way he engaged with people, the way that he carried New York on his back. I mean, I got to see him in New York. I got to see him in Boston, which was interesting to see. Even the fans in Boston, which they're different, the fans in Boston, they really loved Derek Jeter. You can't help but respect the guy. So if there, you know, if there's ever a guy that deserved to go in it on the first ballot, it's him. If there's ever a guy that deserved to do that, it's him. Dick Groach, having the ability to make a statement like that holds up, is an all-time, never forgotten or never to be forgotten baseball story. It's unbelievable for a scout to be able to do that and predict it. But you know, look, Groach was pretty good, and Jeter made him right, made an honest man of him, if you will. And you know, it's if I was Hal Newhouser and I didn't get a Hall of Famer at 1-1, I'm probably quitting too.
Have you ever seen anyone or experience a scout so upset about a player not being drafted that they left the organization over that?
One guy.
Really?
I worked with him also with Milwaukee.
Yeah, I'm not saying you need to say who it is, but
no, I'll tell you, he passed away. You know, he was a good guy, really good scout, good guy. Fire, man, ton of fire. We did a lot of stuff in Latin America together. He's great. You know, we went over to Latin America. His name is Fernando Arango, and Fernando passed a couple years ago, and he had the Midwest for Tampa at the time, and he wanted a player out of Maple Woods Junior College by the name of Albert Pujols, to the point where he had him go to Tampa for their workout, the pre-draft workout. Guys didn't see it. Guys weren't interested. They didn't take him. Went in the 13th round. You know, for Pete's sake, it wasn't like he was, you know, take him at 1. And Fernando quit. He said, I'm out. I quit. And guess who else is going to the Hall of Fame? Albert Pujols. So, it's that's the one guy. Fernando was pretty convicted when it came to players, and that was the one guy I knew that actually worked with that resigned over not getting a player.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because that actually is in the book, The Extra 2% by Jonah Carey, that story.
Yeah.
And he
About
told his
Fernando?
bosses, all I want to say about this guy is that someday he'll hit 40 home runs in the big leagues. Jennings, must have been Dan Jennings, right?
Dan, yeah.
Wasn't ready to dismiss Arango's report or his ranking. So he sent in RJ Harrison, national cross-checker. And the verdict was, I can't do anything with this guy.
Yep. It's a true story.
But
That's how-
everybody has those stories, right?
Yeah, I got a Goldschmidt, and we all have guys that we missed on. Unfortunately, when guys become Hall of Famers and game-changing players, and I'd argue that Goldschmidt has had a very good career, but he's not a Hall of Famer. He's still a cross to bear. He's a cross to bear that I missed on. A lot of guys missed on that too. But also Pujols goes in the 13th round. A lot of guys missed on him too. You know what I mean? It's not something that's a perfect science, and sometimes guys like that work out. And yeah, both those guys are going to be game-changing players to go to the Hall of Fame. And RJ is a really good scout, so all you really do is smile and say, "Oops, well, can't really have that one back." And and he's done a lot with his career since then. Ran the department for a while and signed a lot of players and did a lot of really good things. He was a really good scout. He still is. Still works with Tampa. He's a really good scout.
Is it off base to say that even had the Astros drafted Derek Jeter, I don't know if their trajectory would have changed much?
No, because the timing, they weren't.
Because they had some other right around that time, like when you look at, I think their 95 draft. Their 95 draft was not good.
Well, who was in the big leagues at that time? You're talking about Biggio and Bagwell and that crew.
Well,
that he plays with in the big leagues. For all you know,
maybe you're okay.
Okay. I don't think it's the legacy of the Yankees. Look, we're going to New York in Citi Field, and I've said it a couple of times. As much as iconic as Fenway is, the biggest sports stage, not just like the stadium stage, is New York. And so, the fact that Jeter was in New York and a Yankee makes it, all the more, storybook and Hollywood, right? That's what it is. But when it comes to like, if he had been here in Houston and what he had done, you've got, Biggio, you've got Bagwell.
So Bagwell was 25. All right, maybe it would have changed the trajectory a little bit.
A little bit.
Bagwell was 25. Biggio was 27. Luis Gonzalez was around at that time. Finley was 28. But again, he might not have developed. Billy Wagner was taken in 93. But you also have to remember in 92, 93, the Astros had one of the highest rated prospects in the game in Andujar Cedeno, the shortstop.
Yeah, that doesn't affect you in the draft.
No, I know.
The scouting director at that time for the Houston Astros was Dan O'Brien. Okay. And Dan O'Brien went on to be a general manager in Cincinnati. Why do I know this? Well, I also know who the scout was that signed Phil Nevin. His name was Ramey Richards. Okay. Phil Nevin was Cal State Fullerton, Southern California. I was a high school kid at that time. Ramey spent a lot of time with me, getting to know me. Actually played on the Astros scout team at SoCal in that time. Okay. Dan O'Brien was a scouting director. I ended up working with Dan O'Brien. Guess where? Milwaukee. That was the front office. So you had Doug Melvin, you had Dick Roach, you had Fernando Arango, you had Jack Sorenzik, you had Dan O'Brien. You want to talk about a place to learn? My Lord, the place you could learn to develop Bobby Heck, Tommy Allison, Ray Montgomery. This is all one crew, literally nicknamed like the Brew Crew. This is actually it, right? Dan said, look, they want to take a college guy. That's what it came down to. They didn't want to pay the money. Nevin was willing to take a shave. The draft's a draft. The college guy was sure thing. They took Nevin. Who knew Derek Jeter was going to be Derek Jeter?
Two people did.
Right. But if you're looking at the industry as a whole, people make those decisions in the draft room. They take a safer player, college guy, thinking about where their roster was, maybe a guy who took a little bit less money could get to the big leagues faster, help them there. There's a lot of things that go into that. And it worked out where they got a good player. They just didn't get the guy that went 6, and that's how that works. So, I've heard all that story. Is listening to Dan O'Brien and Dick Groats talk about it was kind of cool too, because one guy signed him, the other guy passed on him, right? In the same place. It was kind of, and then Arango's like, yeah, well, I wanted Pujols, and they didn't give. It's great. It was great to listen to all that stuff go around in a circle. But yeah, I think if he's here, I don't think any of us can remember what the development system was like at the time, but if you have that group, I think Derek Jeter passes Andujar Cedeno. And then Cedeno goes on to be a trade bait somewhere else. Maybe that helps the Astros again. It's still not in New York, but yeah, it's probably life's a little different in Houston, I would say.
I don't know. I'm going back and forth how much life would have been different, but we'll ponder that next time. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. If you have an idea, if you think I'm wrong, if you think Jeremy's right, if you think Jeremy's wrong, you think I'm right, let us know in the comment section, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Also, one last shout out David Peterson, manager of the Houston Apollos. American Association, he's a listener. Congratulations for ruining the Lincoln Salt Dogs' chances of making it in the playoffs.
Nice job, David.
Yeah, Houston Apollos had a tough season, travel team, but they may have been beaten up, as I said in a story on KHOU 11 News, but they never gave up. Never. They didn't give up, Jeremy. They didn't give up. All right, everybody. Until next time.